So when I tell people that I have a mental illness, their reaction is usually, oh, but you're, the life of the party, you're so outgoing, you're funny. And while that may be true, there are a lot of other things about me that are also quite true. So I want to talk to you about how I went from being a total wreck to a high-functioning nutcase, which is why everyone seems to think that I am confident and bubbly. And I want to talk about how to apply these really basic principles to a community, a city, an organization. Oh, that's the other way. So I want to talk about identity crisis. So what's an identity crisis? Well, in psychology terms, it is a prominent part of adolescence, and adolescence is, of course, part of the human life. And it can be defined by the struggle between the person one has come to be and the person society expects one to become. And society, of course, involves many things. It can be our soccer team, it can be the students at school, our teachers, our parents, our extended family. And they all have expectations. And we work really hard to fulfill those expectations, especially at such a tumultuous time in life. But the problem with this is we spend so much energy putting forth our best self for the sake of others. So I myself had a typical identity crisis, started around the age of 13. I was entering puberty. I was, I had crushes on boys. I was growing boobs. Boys were noticing me because I all of a sudden grew boobs. So it was all very strange. But then about 10 years ago, I was nearing my 19th birthday, and I know I look really young, but I am almost 29. I started to see the first signs of really severe anxiety. And I knew this wasn't just an adolescent phase anymore. So I went to my doctor, my family physician at the time, and I told her what's been going on. And for those of you who don't experience anxiety or really know what it's like, I'll describe to you what my anxiety attacks are like. It starts down in my butt cheeks, so they get really tingly, kind of like you have goosebumps, but on your bum. And then it moves to my gut, and you know that sensation you get when you feel like something really bad is about to happen or is happening? That's what happens. But that causes my heart rate to rise. And between these three things, between my tingly butt and my disheveled stomach and my heart rate rising, my head then kicks in and tells me I'm crazy, or that I'm about to die, or that I'm worthless. And this is very scary. You enter panic mode. So I explained this to my doctor, and after 5 minutes, I walked out of there with 2 prescriptions, one for an antidepressant and one for an anti-anxiety. She prescribed to me Ativan. And Ativan is a highly potent benzodiazepine. It's also highly addictive. She prescribed it to me 1 to 2 milligrams a day on an as-needed basis, meaning I was supposed to take it right before my head kicks in and tells me that I'm insane. So, of course, this is an easy solution at the time. But I went there for help. I went there because I wanted to talk to someone. And you'll notice that this is an Ativan ad from 1987, and it says that it's prescribed by so many caring clinicians. In the 5 minutes that I spent with my family doctor, I did not feel like she was listening to me. I did not feel like she cared about me, because all I wanted was to talk. Apparently, this is a nationwide issue. This is from Stats Canada. So counseling at 12% was the most common type of mental health care need cited by Canadians aged 15 and over. But it was also the need that was less often reported as met. On the other hand, though, a need for medication was reported less often, but was, of course, the need most likely to be reported as met. And sorry to use such a cliche term, but this causes a Band-Aid effect. It's like having a cold. If you're sick, you take cold medicine. It just suppresses the symptoms, but you're still sick. So I was doing this. For the better part of 6 years, I was taking my medication regularly, my antidepressant every day, my anti-anxiety just when I needed it. I wasn't abusing it. But I wasn't getting better. I was getting much worse. It got so bad that I couldn't leave my house by myself. I couldn't leave my house without someone leaving with me. I was quite literally afraid of the entire world. So I withdrew from life. And because I was so anxious to leave the house, I was taking more Ativan. And I wasn't leaving the house, so I was getting more depressed. And one of the side effects of Ativan is an increase in suicidal thoughts, which is obviously not good if you're already depressed. So it was just kind of this cycle of, despair, anxiety, loneliness. And I looked at my life and I thought, well, I'm just surviving. I'm not even living anymore. So I don't want any part of it. So I went to a few walk-in clinics and I told a few different doctors that I'd been taking Ativan for anxiety, and they prescribed me Ativan, and I went to a few different pharmacies and I got more Ativan, and then I had all this Ativan. So I went to a sleepover at my best friend's house in the country, and nothing bad could happen to me in the country. But I woke up the next morning, and the very first thing that happened when I opened my eyes was I just cried, and I was just so flooded with despair, and nothing had even happened yet. So I got up, I went to the bathroom, I took all my Ativan, and I downed it. I woke up later in the hospital, and there was a psychiatric nurse at my bedside, and my best friend was there, and I was enlisted into a 6-week program. And during the 6 weeks at the hospital, I learned that my identity crisis actually had a name. And to be diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, you must possess 5 or more of the symptoms listed there on the slide. I could arguably say that most of them, except for the last one, apply to me. And although I was learning a lot about myself and the tools and ways to deal with anxiety and depression, at the end of the 6 weeks, there would be no more resources for me. At the hospital, I had a social worker, I had a psychiatrist, I had group therapy, I had an occupational therapist. But before that, when I wanted help, when I wanted to live, there was nothing for me. And that's obviously a really bad problem. So after the hospital, I, through self-education, learned about expressive therapy, which puts more emphasis on the actual process of creating something as opposed to the end result. So the process of painting as opposed to the painting. And I realized that the more I was writing, because I am a writer, I wrote so much and I was feeling so productive that I started to feel confident. And because I was feeling confident, I was willing to leave the house. I was willing to engage with people. I was willing to take part in new things. And I discovered this great city. So the more time I spent with artists and musicians, the more I realized that this city is really incredible. But I didn't understand why my friends who work at the government had absolutely no idea what I was talking about when I said, oh, I went to this really awesome show. I went to this really awesome new restaurant. So I decided to call it the civil servant's cultural livestock dichotomy. I swear I should have been a psychologist, but that's okay. So just for argument's sake, we'll say the boring, dull side of Ottawa, the reputation that we have is the civil servant side. And then the fun side is the cultural livestock, the people who cultivate the culture, who are throwing events, who are curators, who are musicians. And I started to notice the attempts to reconcile Ottawa's identity crisis. Ottawa Express, which was our Arts Weekly, is discontinued. So we don't have an Arts Weekly anymore. Guerrilla Magazine took a brief, hiatus from print and went online, national only. Modern Drunk is a really crappy magazine from the 90s, but it's pretty entertaining. And then there was a new wave of attempts. Apartment 613 in 2008 came up with this concept of a local blog with a really extensive events calendar, and in 2009 it launched, and it has gained so much steam since. And it was my survival guide to this city. Anytime I didn't know what I was up to that day, I'd look on their website. So I noticed all these great things and that all these people were doing their job to reconcile Ottawa's identity, and I wanted to know what I could do, because I was at a point where I was feeling confident and creative and that I, networked pretty well. So in came Heard magazine. But it was important that this magazine, had an identity, because I wasn't about to throw an identity crisis at an identity crisis. And I pulled this cultural livestock term out of my ass and put a definition on it. So persons who contribute to the cultivation of culture and or the development of creativity by coming together as a herd. And I just started, and the reason I say herd is because we do all work together in Ottawa. We are small enough that we're willing to help each other, but we're big enough that there is potential for competition and vibrancy. Over the last 2 years, I can say that I have been the most mentally stable, the most confident, and the most social I have been probably in my whole life. And I'm not crediting the magazine entirely for that. What I'm saying is that a lot of different elements had to come together. I really had to pool my own resources. It was a combination of expressive therapy, medication, which I still take, psychiatry, I see a psychiatrist weekly or bi-weekly, and the magazine, feeling productive. And these same principles can apply to Ottawa's identity crisis, because our contributors, a lot of them are civil servants. They have their jobs 9 to 5. In the evening, they take part in this incredible community, and then Monday morning the next week, they tell everyone about it, and that's all it takes. They just have to go to the office, tell the people about it, and it's going to spread like a plague. So we just need to come together. There needs to be less mutual exclusivity between groups. Yes. Because with such a complicated challenge comes really complex solutions. So I suppose what I'm asking is for all the Ottawans to keep an open mind and keep an eye out for the next thing to be a part of.